Hey my ducklings, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video I'm going to be showing you exactly how I DIY'd these floating shelves and how I hung them. So if you'd like to see how I did that, please keep watching. My mom had bought these floating shelves a couple of years ago at Mica and she didn't end up using them, and so she said that I could use them for my room. Because they are a couple of years old, they were a little bit faded and damaged, and so I decided to sand them down and to use them in the natural wood color that they came in. Okay, so these are really heavy, sturdy pieces of wood. This corner is a bit damaged, but that's okay. I'm just gonna hang it upside down, I guess. Yeah, so let's start with those. When it comes to sanding down bigger pieces of wood like this, I would suggest using a handheld machine, which was originally my plan, but unfortunately the sanding mouse that we had actually died. The battery wasn't working anymore, and because I'm such an impatient person, I decided to just use sandpaper and do it by hand. This is something I wouldn't recommend because it takes a lot of manpower, a lot of effort, as well as a lot of time, and you are not always going to get the smoothest finish that you are looking for. I sanded down the first floating shelf by hand, and I left the second one for the second day, and I ended up using a different machine to sand that piece down. When you are sanding down wood, you generally need to start with a coarser grit sandpaper to remove the paint and to also remove any imperfections on the wood. And so I started off with a 60 grit sandpaper just to strip off all the white paint. After I was done with that, I went in with a 120 grit sandpaper just to smooth out the shelf and to make sure that there are no rough edges or any splinters left over on the wood. Once you are done sanding off the wood, you can go in with a varnish or a paint. It all depends on your preference. I really loved the color of the wood once I had removed the paint, and I decided to keep it in its natural color. Because I did not have that much time and I was really in a hurry to get this done, I didn't varnish the shelves. Ideally, I would have gone in with a clear matte varnish just to seal off the wood to keep it protected and just to make sure that the wood lasts over time and that the wood doesn't get damaged when you are changing or moving around any decorative pieces that you may have placed on the shelf. So when it was time for me to prep my room, the very first thing I did was make sure that I put a drop sheet down on the carpet and that I masking taped it to the wall. This is to ensure that when you are drilling your holes into the wall, that none of the dust falls down onto the carpet, and this just makes it a whole lot easier for you to clean up after you have completed the job. Next, I decided how high I wanted my shelves to be as well as how far apart I wanted them to be. I knew that I wanted the shelves to be exactly centered on the wall, and so I measured out the width of the wall and found the halfway mark and marked it on the wall. Then after that, I measured the width of each of the shelves and I marked out the halfway mark for each of the shelves. When you are hanging them, you will align each of the halves with each other, and this ensures that you hang the shelves exactly centered on the wall. When I was doing this, I made sure to mark one of the shelves as the top shelf and the other shelf as the bottom shelf, just to make sure that when we were busy measuring out all the different measurements, that we used the correct shelf for each of the different measurements. This is to just make sure that you don't mess anything up, because obviously shelf is always different and they are not going to have the exact same measurements, and this is just to prevent any mix-up while in the process of hanging the shelves. While we were in the process of doing all the measurements, I made sure to use a level just to make sure that everything was exactly straight and perfect on the wall. With the floating shelves that I got, they came with 2 metal pieces that fit exactly into the back of the shelf. And so we needed to make sure that we marked out the measurements on the wall so that when we screwed in each of the metal pieces on the wall, that the shelf would have no issue sliding directly onto the metal pieces. This requires exact, precise measurements, so always make sure that you are very careful and neat while you are making your markings. I also made sure to just double check all of my markings before I started drilling, just to make sure that we weren't going to make any mistakes. If you have watched my previous video on how I did my DIY gallery wall, you will see that my hack for making sure that you keep everything neat and tidy while you are drilling holes into the wall is to put some masking tape on a plastic bag and stick the plastic bag directly under each of the holes that you are drilling. This way, the plastic bag catches all of the dust that falls out of the wall, and it makes it a much easier job for you to clean up after you are done. You need to ensure that when you are drilling your holes that you are using the correct size drill bit as well as the correct size anchor. You do not want to use a drill bit that is going to make a hole that is too big for the anchor. The anchor needs to fit very snug and tight into the wall so that when you screw in the metal pieces that fit into the floating shelf, that it is not going to be moving around or wobbly in any way. If all your measurements are correct and precise when it comes time to put your floating shelves onto the metal pieces, you are probably going to need a rubber hammer or a rubber mallet to put the shelf onto the metal pieces. It is going to be a very snug, very tight fit, and you are most likely not going to be able to push it on by hand. So we used a rubber mallet just to lightly knock the wooden shelf onto the metal pieces, and this just made it much easier for us to get the shelf on because we really didn't have enough power to do it by hand. After we were done hanging the shelves, I just made sure to remove the masking tape and the drop sheet so that I could vacuum the area beneath where we were working, just to make sure that there was no dust left over on the carpet. When it was time to put some decor on my shelves, I knew that I wanted to use the white mirror that I had hanging in my room previously. So I literally just added in the other pieces that I had bought when I went to get my frames. And I just played around with the positioning of everything until I was happy with how it looked. And this is the final result. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to like, share and subscribe if you enjoy my new DIY tutorials. It'll really help me with the future content that I am planning to put out for you guys. And I will see you guys in my next video.